So obviously we've got the contact time where we're teaching, we've got like an hour and a half lesson, but the support that we have to give outside of that goes massively beyond that. So I spend, a good 3 or 4 hours for every 1 hour lesson, just making notes and support materials.
I'd say I'd probably spend about as much time preparing notes as I do actually teaching, because really we want to make sure that every lesson that we deliver will work as a handout material as well, because students should always be able to get the most out of us.
But yeah, it just depends from class to class really. Different teachers provide different notes, some don't provide any. And obviously then you've got to be taking your notes in the class.
I probably don't spend as much time as I should doing that sort of thing. I tend to just give my students my lecture notes. But what I tend to do is quite often have things on the lecture slides that I don't have time to go over in the lesson.
I've definitely been in a lecture before where you do feel the pressure that if you don't get everything down, that's your only chance to get it. So sometimes it can be difficult if you're really trying to listen and take everything down. If there's a lot to go through in a lecture, it's quite pressured.
It can be quite hard because you're trying to look at the screen. Obviously your teacher's talking you through what you need to be doing. So you can't be looking at what they're doing whilst on your screen as well and taking the notes, because obviously you need the notes for when your teacher isn't there, for when you're working through it on your own.
Well, it's difficult for us because we've got to balance time between obviously teaching the lessons and actually planning to deliver them. But we're not just planning for delivery now, we're planning for people who haven't been able to make it. So obviously if a student legitimately can't be there because of illness or whatever else, then we've got to come up with some kind of materials to provide for them, so that they can still receive the same level of education that everybody else does.
I found having them online really useful because if you miss a lecture you can go back and basically look over everything that was covered, and it's pretty simple to fill in the gaps of what you've missed.
Students can refer back to them if they were in the lesson and there are things that they weren't sure about, or for people that have missed the lesson particularly, those kind of materials are a necessity. If people don't have those, they're really going to struggle.
I just think that I've heard of other courses that have some of their lectures online, like alternate weeks. So 1 week they'll go into the lecture in uni, then the next week they can sit and watch the podcast at home. I just think it's a bit unfair that we have to come in every week if there's some stuff that we could be taught via a podcast. Perhaps if it's just like a really simple theory or something that doesn't need any sort of class interaction, because in lectures a lot of the time you're not allowed to ask questions because there's so many people. A lot of it is just sit and listen to the lecture, then wait for the seminar, and then in the seminar it's more of a discussion.
Basically lots of other courses, if they miss their lectures, all the lecture slides will be online so they can catch up, but with our course I don't think I've ever been able to find the lecture notes online. I think sometimes it is good because it means that you don't miss the lectures, and if you're not there then you don't get the information, so it encourages you to go. But sometimes if you're missing it for a valid reason, then you do get behind and it's difficult to catch up.
I think if it was all available online, then it's not very social, is it, to sit at home and learn from a computer, but I think occasionally it'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea just to have lectures online, just because it'd be a much better experience just being in a lecture. You can ask questions, and it's just an interactive environment, and it's be too antisocial just learning everything online.
Some people feel that they don't need to attend because they can get just as much by just going online and downloading it onto their laptop. For attendance, it's a bad thing, but I'll always attend anyway because lecturers can't say everything. Like, a lot of it'll say the theory, and then our lecturers will say like a case study that we can use to apply that theory. So I feel I get a lot more out of it by attending the lecture.
We may end up, if we give them lots of supplementary materials, we may end up in a situation where we're just creating work for ourselves and they're not even looking at it, accessing it, benefiting from it at all. I mean, we think everyone's going to be as enthusiastic about the subject as we are, and that isn't always the case. And I think that's a caution that we should maybe monitor how much is being downloaded so that we get the balance right, because we don't want to make ourselves too busy, put ourselves all out for the student, when in actual fact they're looking for the bare minimum.